In the pursuit of meaningful life, we often find ourselves entangled in the complexity of possessions and desires. Minimalism emerges as a profound philosophy, a deliberate choice to strip away the superfluous layers of life, leaving only the essential. It is an intentional embrace of simplicity, an ode to the beauty found in the bare and the basic. Minimalism is not merely a design aesthetic. It is a profound shift in perspective. It prompts us to question the value we place on material possessions and invites us to savor the richness of life unburdened by the unnecessary. Or in other words, minimalism is not the lack of something, but it's the perfect amount of something, as it was once said by none other than Nicolas Burrows. Welcome, travelers! Welcome. Please come in and make yourself at home. I've done something very stupid, I'm not gonna lie, and I would like to share it with you today. I would like to present to you my insolent, disrespectful, and quite minimalistic druid build. You can finish basically everything in a game with it. You can, do all of the newly added Uber bosses, including Durid. You can cure Uber Lilith. What else? You can easily farm Helltides and Seasonal Zone and everything else what you would like to do, basically. So, I'm not really sure why I did it. I was just playing with my wolf. I wanted to make this build since the early days of Diablo 4, but I didn't want to rely on luck, because in order to make this build work, you need Staff of the Crown. And knowing my luck, I would never have found it. So I did not make this build until now. But since Season 2 is here, and you can now target farm certain uniques, in this case, in case of Staff of the Crown, you can farm it from Uber Varshan, which is not really that hard to get materials for. I thought, why not? Let's give it a try, So I farmed some Varshan, killed him a couple of times, got my Staff of the Crown, upgraded it, jeweled it, all of that jazz, and went into the field to test it, and it was quite bad, which I was not expecting. Even though, we did get a very nice buff to basic skill attacks this season in the form of the Moonrise Vampiric Powers. But for some reason it really wasn't working that great. But then, I started finding the build, moving points around, changing my Paragon Board, all of that, and testing it, and, I've spent quite a lot of time on it. And then it kind of clicked. The build was quite good, I was able to do all the content in the game with it. But I thought, what, let's... I'm using so many abilities, but, for example, I had Petrify on my taskbar and on my action bar. It was great, every 40 seconds or 30 seconds, don't remember, you could just freeze the entire screen, you would get a huge damage buff, it was great. I didn't really need to use it. I know, it was nice to have, but it wasn't really mandatory. Like in some builds, you need certain skills to make them work. Then I also got another build, which is another ability. I took it off my bar, and then I thought, what? Let's see how far I can go with it. And then I basically took everything off, except the Earthen Bulwark, because, I liked having some sort of invulnerability. Unstoppable and some additional shield was always nice for tricky situations. But I thought, what? Let's try without anything. It's ridiculous, how will you survive? Will the damage be enough and whatnot? But I tried it out, and I was quite surprised, pleasantly surprised. And then I thought, what? I'm gonna do something even more stupid. I'm gonna try to beat Uber Lilith with it. I went and I did that, which was quite weird, as you will see in the footage somewhere. I'm not really sure in what order I put it, but there will be footage from Uber Durid, Uber Lilith. You'll see it in the footage, I killed a couple of times with him, which to my surprise it was the easiest fight against Uber Lilith in my experience so far. I tried it with 2 versions of Sorcerer and Barbarian so far, so it was definitely the easiest one, which surprised me extremely. I was extremely surprised. But the weird thing is that the build is in a kind of a weird spot when you don't deal enough damage to just completely delete her and skip all of her phases. But you deal enough damage that her phase 2 is somewhat bugged sometimes. That you deal enough damage so she doesn't summon her tumors. So, you know, I killed her a couple of times when she spawned some tumors, and then I killed her when she did not spawn the tumors. So, I thought I'll include this clip in the video to show you how absurd it can be. I've also done and then I thought, you know, let's see what else can I do. So I was pretty confident I could do Uber Butcher, and Uber Butcher was a pushover. Like the Grigor and Varshan were also pushovers. But then I thought, you know what, let's try the ultimate challenge, which is tier 100 Nightmare Dungeon. And you know, I was quite lucky because I did not roll any terrible affixes on the sigil. Yeah, so that was quite nice. I went in and I had to be a bit cautious, I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't as aggressive as I would normally be, but it was actually quite easy, I'm not gonna lie. It was the easiest tier 100 I've done so far, I think. Although the 100 with Frenzy Barb was also quite easy. So yeah, that's quite a bit short introduction. I know I rambled a lot, but you know, what can you do? I like doing that, so sorry about that. If you don't like listening to me ramble, then you know, I always put chapters in my YouTube description, so you can just skip right to the meat of the video, and you don't have to listen to me ramble. So that's it, and now I'm gonna go straight into the details, and I'm gonna show you how the build works. See you there. And hello again. We have the lovely Tree of Whispers behind us, and I think that's a good scenery to describe this build. I really like this place in the game. Yeah, let's go and let's dive right in. Let's dive right in. As I said before, you will need the great Staff of the Crown. You cannot really play the build without it. And what it will do, it will allow Claw to be a storm skill, which is important. It will also cast Storm Strike at increased effectiveness when you're using it. Maybe let's go to the abilities and to the skill tree. Let's start with the skill tree. And as you can see, our basic skill tree is quite beefy. Why is that? Well, we need to put 5 points into Claw, because it's our main source of damage, so we're buffing it up. I have 17 out of 5 right now, and if you don't want to be a purist and a minimalist like me, then you can definitely use the shapeshifter aspect on your boots, and it gives you +2, I believe up to +3, I think, ranks to your shapeshifter skills when you're using Hurricane, so you can buff it up. But anyway, max up the Claw. Go for the Enhanced Claw, which will increase the attack speed, which is great. You go White Claw or Fierce Claw. I don't really need the poison, to be honest, so I prefer to have a 15 chance to get additional attack. And you will see why, because our attack speed is extremely important, because we do proc a lot of stuff. We are proccing everything all the time. Now, you may think why I also buff up Storm Strike. That's because it takes into account your ranks into Storm Strike when you're using Great Staff of the Crown. So it will increase your damage from Storm Strike by in this example 150%. So if I would have like rank 1, it would be a much lower base for the multiplier, so that's why we want to put all of our points into here also. Enhanced Storm Strike would be nice because it will immobilize enemies, will be a form of crowd control, and additional stuff will be happening to enemies when they are immobilized. Here is a very important choice you have to make. You either go with Firm Storm Strike, which will give you a source of vulnerability, or Wild Storm Strike, which will, you know, make your Storm Strike chain 2 additional times. You know, it seems that the Wild Storm Strike would be better because it will definitely increase your clear speed, but at the same time it would be really hard to put vulnerable on our enemies. We would have to do it from our Vampiric Powers, and then we would lose 2 very important damage multipliers, so that's why I decided to go with the Fierce Storm Strike. It will slightly lower our clear speed, but our single target will be much better because of it. And you will also see that I have an Earth Spike maxed out here. And you might think, why is that? And that is because we will also be proccing Earth Spike whenever we use our claw. And if you do not believe me, because you may not believe me, you may think, I'm full of whatever think I am. But let me show you. Let me show you. Let me turn into this beautiful, beautiful werewolf. And I will show you that I'm not really that big of a liar. Oops, not that button, sorry. As you can see, right in front of us from time to time, this boulder will appear. Right now we're quite unlucky, it doesn't happen very often, but it's all up to chance, and as you can see, it's proccing. So let's get back to the tree, because I think that's a much better place to talk about the build. We'll be surrounded by our lovely colleagues hanging from the tree. Hello there, guys. Yeah, let's go back right into it. Let's go back to the skill tree. So that is why I'm also buffing Earth Spike. Even though you might think the damage is low, we have ways of actually scaling it up a bit. And then I'm also putting 1 point to get the chance for stun, which is not that impressive, but against Uber Lilith, any sorts of crowd control is nice because it will stagger her. And we are attacking really, really fast, so this surprisingly will proc quite often. And the last point to Fierce Spike to get some sort of a fortify. But if you want some, we will be immobilizing enemies, so we might go with Wild Earth Spike. If you just want to buff up your damage, it would be better. It would be better for you. Now, moving on to core skills, we have no abilities. I have 3 points here, but not really sure. It's maybe from an amulet or... Oh no, that's from my chest piece, yeah. But we do need Predatory Instincts, very nice, juicy 6% crit chance against close enemies, and this is a very crit-centric build. We rely on crit, we want to buff the crit as high as possible, so that's why it's one of our main places we want to spend those points. And we also go for Digitigrade Gate? No idea how to pronounce it, no idea how to say the name of that skill, sorry. But whenever we're in werewolf form, and we will be in werewolf form basically all the time, we'll get a movement speed bonus, which is really nice, especially during phase 2 of Uber Lilith. But it will also buff up our damage indirectly, which we'll get to in a second. Next, going to the defensive skill, as you can see, no skills here, 3 points from our chest piece. Ancestral Fortitude, which is really nice, which will help us survive. That non-physical damage resistance is great. And also Vigilance. I should put those... oh my, I did not notice that. We can just put those points wherever we want. We have 3 points to spare, because we're not really using to any defensive skills. That's I really wasn't paying attention. We will find a nice place for them, believe me. Moving on. Companion skills, nothing here for us. And now the rough skills. Now we'll have a lot of interesting things here. We're not using Rabbis once again, it's from our chest piece. We need 1 point to neurotoxin, which make a poisoned enemy slowed, and slowed is a form of crowd control. So all our bonuses from gear and from Paragon Board, where we deal increased damage to crowd control enemies, will then work. We need 1 point to toxic claws, because our critical strikes, and we will crit all the time, will poison the enemies. And when they're poisoned, they will, through various means, receive increased damage from us, and they will also be slowed. So those 2 points are mandatory in my opinion. We do have Envenom, which will give us a nice boost to against poisoned enemies. I heard it used to be a 30% multiplier, now it's a flat 30%. However, I read that some people say that it's actually display bug, that it's actually a multiplier. Not sure if that's true, I have not tested it myself. There are so many numbers flying around that I just, was too busy to do it. But if that's the case, then you should definitely try to find a necklace with additional ranks to Envenom, because this would then boost up your damage like so much. It would be great. As for our storm passives, which are really great, we'd want to put a lot of points here. Elemental exposure, not so much. We already have a way of increasing, putting enemies under the vulnerable effect, and besides, if you put additional points, it only increases the duration, it doesn't increase the chance. If it would increase the chance also, then maybe it would be worth to put some points here, but right now I'm not convinced. I'm not really putting any points into Endless Tempest, as we're not using Hurricane and we're not using Cataclysm. Now this is very important, Bad Omen. Whenever we attack enemies under the effect of Vulnerable, Immobilize or Stun, which is basically all the time, we will also be hitting them with a Lightning Bolt. And not only this Lightning Bolt deals quite a nice amount of damage, you have ways of increasing its damage heavily through the Paragon Board. So that's very important, very sexy skill to have, very sexy passive. I love it, I'm putting 3 points into here. As for Electric Shock, it is also really great. This will give us a chance to immobilize enemies, and whenever we are... And additional effect is that whenever we actually attack an immobilized enemy, it will give us a very juicy 21% damage multiplier against them. You know, so we'll get a source of immobilize from here, and also another source of immobilize from, where was it? From our Storm Strike. So, you know, this will proc a lot. So this is very nice, very good, very high 21% damage multiplier. Charge Atmosphere is not awesome, not gonna lie, it doesn't happen very often, but against Uber Lilith any form of damage is nice, and you have to keep in mind that the lightning bolts, whenever you proc them, they will activate a nice multiplier against those enemies, which I'll get to it in a second, but it's important to have as many lightning bolts as possible, so that's why I have it here. I also put 1 point into Crushing Earth, because I wanted to go to Stone Guard. Whenever we will be under the effect of Fortify, our Earth skills will have a nice damage multiplier, which is really important. So now that I have those 3 points left, I could put them in here, and maybe also into Crushing Earth, who knows. But also if you want additional, easier way of getting Fortified, you might put it into Safeguard. But overall, I would have, you know, putting them here would be quite nice. As for the ultimate skills, once again, no abilities. We are also not getting for the Fortified tree, because we don't really need it that much. As for the shape-shifting passes, we're also not going there, because we will be under the effect of Wolf all the time, so we'll not be shaping in and out of the form. So those will not work for us. But then we're going to Defiance. And this is a very juicy 12% damage of all our nature skills. So, you know, Earth is a nature skill, and Light and Storm is also a nature skill. So it will buff both of those sources of damage by 12% against elites, which is great. Next, we have Natural Disaster. And with this, our Earth skill will get a nice damage multiplier against vulnerable enemies, which is great. And also our storm skills, so all of our storm strikes, will get also a nice 12% damage multiplier against stunned, immobilized enemies, and we'll be immobilizing them all the time. Now, there's also one more node which is worth taking, the Inner Circle. Not going to be using it because it's not going to do anything for us, because we do not spend spirit, so it's useless. The one thing which I thought would be quite good for this build is Resonance, because my assumption would be that it should proc, and then if it would work, it would give us a very, very big nature damage multiplier, like 18%, you know, because it's a triple of 6%, but for some reason it's not working. Not sure if it's intentional, if it's bugged, or if it's just the way it should work. I don't know. Maybe they'll change it in the future, so it's worth keeping note of this passive here. Maybe in the future they will change it. And next we're going to our key passives. And the passive which allows us to use this sort of playstyle and use all of those basic abilities at the same time is Nature's Fury. Now, what it does. casting Earth skill has a chance to trigger a free Storm skill and of the same category and vice versa. So that means that whenever we use Storm Strike, there is a chance that Earth Spike will also proc. So when we're using Claw, we're proccing Storm Strike, and there is a chance that Earth Spike, like 30% chance that the Earth Spike will proc. And this free skills count as both Earth and Storm skills. And in addition to that, you have to remember something very important about Staff of the Crown. Let's read it together. Claw is now a Storm skill. So not only our Storm Strike can proc it, but our Claw is also a Storm skill now. So this can also proc it. That's my understanding. I may be wrong, but if I read this correctly and looking at the damage numbers, I think I do. This is a very interesting, very sexy situation when we are double dipping into this sort of realm of ridiculous multipliers and ridiculous self-casts. But I may be wrong, you know. I may be wrong. Yeah, so that's basically why all of that can work together. All of that can proc each other. Let's assume that we have those 3 points to spare. So we could either put them into resonance if they fix it or if it works and I just don't see it work. Or you could put them into a Stone Guard to get even bigger multiplier and crushing Earth. Or you could put them just into Safeguard if you want even more fortify. With this you will fortify extremely fast because we're critting all the time. But yeah, I personally would go for damage and would leave it like this. Anyway, that is all for the section of the skill tree. Let's now move on to the next important part of the video. As you can see, I'm going around here through the left, and I'm also dipping slightly to get tenacity for the nice armor and 8% life, which I recommend you do. And then my first glyph is actually Fang and Claw, % damage multiplier against close enemies, which is really great. And it will also buff the surrounding magic nodes. And that will be very beneficial for us, because not only we do need dexterity and intelligence, because it's required in most rare nodes in our remaining Paragon boards, but it will give us a small amount of damage also. As you can see, I have like level 15 glyph at the moment, and I'm getting like 17% damage, which is not impressive, but nice to have. But it will also give us 5% to all resistances, which I like. So we do have a bit of everything here. % damage multiplier, bonus to stats to unlock other Paragon bonuses easier. Very nice all resistances and bonus and some small damage. Moving on. And the first board you would like to attach is Thunderstruck. This will give us a very nice multiplier against enemies who are close when you're using Storm skills, and we are using Storm skills all the time. And in addition to that, you will get critical strike damage bonuses, and we will, as I said, this is a very crit-centric build. We'll be critting a lot. And also damage against crowd control enemies. We will be crowd controlling them a lot. We do get also a lot of crit damage here, and vulnerable damage we will also be using, so that's great. We do have some willpower with storm damage, and also damage reduction from vulnerable enemies, which is great. And here's a very fun glyph to use. It's the electrocution build. Not only you will get a huge damage multiplier to your lightning bolts, and if you have not used them before, I'll just quickly remind you what they are. You get lightning bolts from the Bad Omen passive and from the Charged Atmosphere passive. So you will get a lot of bonus damage from that node. As you can see, I'm getting like over 400%. So that's great. But not only that, whenever lightning bolts strike an enemy, you will get a huge, really huge 20% damage multiplier. That's just That is so good. That's going to make a lot of difference in your damage. So that's why you want to put this glyph in a place where you will have access to a lot of willpower nodes. And as you can see, we do have a lot of willpower nodes. This place is full of willpower nodes. We get 1, 2, 3. We do get 12, unless I'm not mistaken. 12 willpower nodes, and 2 of them are big willpower nodes. As you can see, from the normal willpower node, you're getting 31%, but from the rare one, you're getting 63%. So I think it's a good location to put this glyph in. So yeah. The next Paragon board I decided to attach was the heightened Malice, because this again will give us a huge damage multiplier against poisoned enemies, and we have a way of poisoning them through slow. And in here you also, the poison resist is really nothing special, but I thought I could go either through the left in here or go through the right. If I had gone through the right, I would save 1 point. But I thought, you know what, I think it's better just to lose 1 point, but to get the extra health and the some free poison resist. So we're getting 6 points of health and some poison resist. So it will make building our character easier. In addition to that, we're getting damage against poisoned enemies and elites, and all again damage against poisoned enemies, so very good. We do get, again, damage against poisoned enemies and damage reduction from poisoned enemies. So overall, a lot of damage and some nice damage reduction here. And the glyph I decided to put in here is Spirit. And as I said, very crit-centric build. We do get a lot of crit damage from here, and as you can see, we have around 430% crit damage, so quite nice. And we also make our crits give us, and whenever we crit an enemy, we put a damage multiplier on top of them. So you will get 12% damage multiplier against Uber Lilith and other Uber bosses. And again, it's important to put the glyph in a place where you will get a lot of dexterity nodes. This way, you will be able to bump the damage a lot. So that is why I have it here. As you can see, I have 90 nodes here, and out of those 9 nodes, 2 are magical, which gives us additional benefit. Yeah, try to put the most important glyphs in a place where they'll give you the most benefit. So next node, next Paragon board, which I decided to attach, was the Lust for Carnage. And I'm not really going for the legendary node itself, because we do not use Spirit, we do not need Spirit. But first of all, we do get attack speed, which is huge for us. That's why I've decided to go here. We do get the werewolf damage and critical strike damage, which is great. And again, we do get some healing, which it's not great in itself, even though it does synergize as well, which you will see in a second. But we do have some also werewolf skill damage here. But it gives us a place where we have quite a lot of willpower nodes. So we do have 10 willpower nodes, out of which 2 are actually rare, which gives us additional bonus. So that's why I put it here. If you do not want to use the werewolf, because it's not optimal. In terms of damage, I will tell you it's not optimal. You could use territorial. However, you have to keep in mind that you'd probably need to move the glyphs a bit, because there are not a lot of dexterity nodes around, so you wouldn't be able to buff the passive damage from territorial as much. And also your damage reduction will only work against close enemies. Werewolves gives you global damage reduction, which is much better. However, why I am suggesting you could use territorial here is because it gives you increased damage to close enemies, and that pairs really well with Thunderstruck, because this is based on damage against close enemies. So the higher damage against close enemies you have, the bigger multiplier to your damage from Thunderstruck you will have. So it is worth considering, so it's up to you which one you really want to choose. And the last node, the last Paragon board, is entirely up to you, I felt that I did not need any damage. I did not need any additional damage, but I was missing some resistances. So I decided to attach the Constricted Tendrils Paragon Board to get bonuses to all resistance here and all resistances here. I believe I will get like 1-2 more points, so I will be able to fully unlock those 2 points here. And then I would have maximum resistances to everything. But if you do not have, because it all depends on your gear, what items you find. So in case you have gear which provides more resistances bonuses and you would like some additional damage, you could definitely go with one of the other boards. But if you want to buff up your damage, I would suggest using any legendary board and just rushing for the glyph socket and putting, you know, one of the additional damage glyphs in there. But that's up to you. I did not need damage, I needed all resists, so that's why I went here. Now, let's go to the next part of the build. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the gear. I will give you 2 options here, depending on what kind of content you're doing. As for your helm, I'm going for the aspect which will reduce the damage we take when we use basic skills, so we'll have it active all the time. I'm trying to get some armor and basic skill attack speed here. The cooldown reduction is not needed, it would be better to have life here, but you know, I wasn't that lucky. The barrier generation is nice. I'll tell you why in a second. Ideally, basic skill attack speed, total armor and life would be great. As for the armor, I'm using Mad Wolf's Glee, which is also not that difficult to get. You can target farm it. I believe it also dropped for me from Varshan. But it's a very good offensive chest. Not only are we getting additional flat damage, but we're also getting movement speed, which we really need in the build, because not only it will allow us to, you know, move faster, which is quite self-explanatory, but it will also buff our damage indirectly, which I'll talk about in a second. Flat life is great, and damage reduction from poison enemies also works for us because we'll be poisoning them all the time. And it will buff all of our werewolf skills, so it will give us a very nice bonus to claw. However, if you feel like you don't need the damage, if you just want some extra survivability, then go for a chest with like armor, life, and some damage modifiers there, like damage reduced from close enemies, or just flat damage reduced, or damage while fortified, or damage from poisoned enemies reduced. You know, just go for a very defensive chest if you don't need the damage. As for the gloves, you want attack speed, crit chance, and lucky hit chance. I was also quite lucky to get willpower here, which is great. It will buff my damage, but if I could, I would exchange it for bonus to all stats. And this would allow me to activate those rare nodes around the board a bit easier, you know, so yeah. And as for the aspect, very important aspect of natural balance, which synergizes extremely well with the build. Casting a storm skills grants your earth skills a very big % damage multiplier. So that is why our basic skill Earth Spike is actually able to deal quite nice damage. But in addition to that, casting Earth skills, and we'll be casting Earth Spike, will give us a very nice crit chance for our storm skills. So that's a very nice synergy to have. So you have we do have 40% from base, we do have additional % from here, we can use potions and whatnot. So yeah, I really like it here. I really like that aspect. Now, let's talk about the pants. Pants are very important in every man's life. It's important to have them on, and it's important for them to be comfortable, for obvious reasons. Now, I'm going to give you 2 options. Of course, you can go for regular pants, regular legendary pants with an aspect, but you can go, if you have some unique items laying, sword in your chest, you could go for either Tybalt's Will or Temerity, and I'll tell you why. Let's start with Temerity. Temerity is great. Because if you read the Temerity's description, not only will it heal you, we have quite high lucky hit chance, so it will give us some healing, it will increase our healing received, potion drop chance is terrible, and some flat life is great. So overall, we're missing a lot of, if we use Temerity, we will miss a lot of defensive modifiers, defensive affixes, which we normally can have on our, what's it called? Pants, right? But when we heal above 100% of our health, and we will do that with Undying, every time we cast basic skills, we heal ourselves. So whenever we do that, we will get a barrier, up to 60% of our health in my example. I don't have a very good pair of Temerity, so yeah, but you can go up to 80. So it will allow you to basically have another bar of life. It will allow you to self-heal basically, not because self-heal the barrier with Undying, which is nice because you will be at 100% health, you will be with barrier up. So that excess healing from your Undying will go straight to the barrier from Temerity, which is great. You will also, thanks to Temerity, will be able to preemptively pop your potion. And this way, whenever you go into a fight, you can start the fight with some additional barrier. So that is why I like Temerity. And I use Temerity in conjunction with a conceited choker, conceited aspect on my amulet. I use this version of the build for like harder content, like nightmare dungeons, when I need to survive, when the need for defensive bonuses is higher. This gives me additional Temerity, gives me additional layer of defense thanks to very high amounts of barrier. And here in the amulet slot, I have very defensive amulet combined with the conceited aspects, which will give me a very big damage multiplier whenever I have an aspect. Whenever I have a barrier, sorry. So the Temerity with this aspect work very well together, because we do get a defensive layer from Temerity and from the choker, but we're not losing a lot of offense because we're able to get a very nice, very high damage multiplier, thanks to the conceited aspect. The other option, which I think you could use, is the Thibault's Will. This is a highly offensive option, which I recommend you use against Ube Lilith and Ube Duriel and all other Ube bosses. Not only it gives you flat damage, the other affixes are not that important, but whenever we are unstoppable and for 4 seconds after we are unstoppable, we get a huge damage multiplier. And we'll be able to use the unstoppable, thanks to one of our Vampiric Powers, which is Metamorphosis. So whenever you're using this, Thibault's Will, you will be able to proc it. So whenever you're using your dodge, you will proc Metamorphosis, and you'll unlock Thibault's Will. As you can see, there's no icon here, but you can see the difference in the attack power actually. Without it I have 15k, and after dash I have 21k. So that is a very big damage multiplier. And then, because we'll no longer be generating barriers, so we don't need the conceited aspect, I'm going for much more offensive necklace with offensive affixes, and here I'm going for the rapid aspect in order to increase our basic attack speed, which is just pure sexiness. If you ask me, this is so enjoyable. But yeah, the attack speed is just a flat damage multiplier to us. It's extremely good, and you will see very nice results with it. As for the boots, I'm sure you could use the unique boots, because we don't really have anything important on our boots which we really need. The damage against when we are injured is great, and the fortified generation is good, and total armor when where we are in werewolf form, which is all the time, is great. So those are great, but it really depends on the content you're doing. When you're fighting Ube Lilith, it's important to have a pair of boots with the slaughter aspect, which will gives you additional movement speed after you have not been hit. This way you will be able to dodge her fireballs with ease. You won't have to really worry about that. Because if you combine this movement speed with movement speed from your boots, with movement speed from your Mad Wolf's Glee, and movement speed from your what's it called? This aspect, which I cannot pronounce, you will be just zooming around the battlefield. But there's also but if you're doing some other content and you want to go for maximum damage, the Penitent Graves would be great, because it will allow you to chill enemies, and that's another form of crowd control, and you will get a damage multipliers against shield enemies. So this would be also a way for you to boost your damage even higher. As for the weapon, as I said, Great Staff of the Crown is mandatory. Try to get the greatest Staff of the Crown which you can find. Greatest Great Staff of the Crown which you can find. So put two topazes in there. As for my jewelry, I put diamonds everywhere to get all resistances, because I don't really want to waste all resistance, any resistance affixes on my gear. And as I said, I already told you about the necklaces, so let's go about the rings. As I said, very crit-centric rings, so I want crit chance and crit damage on my rings. You could also go, if you cannot find those two, you could go for crit chance and additional crit lightning damage, or crit werewolf skill damage, but I prefer the global crit strike damage modifier, but you know, it's extremely hard to get the right combination of affixes on your gear, so I know it's not always possible, so yeah, so try to get those two. Lucky hit chance is also quite nice to have, because it allows us to proc all of our lightning bolts and whatnot, so it's good to have. And I always like to have life on my rings, because you know, I like staying alive. We have like 15k life now, which is quite nice, which is not bad. And on this ring I'm using the overcharged loop aspect. It may seem like it's not that great, because you do have a chance to turn an enemy into a lightning rod for 3 seconds, and the damage may not seem like a lot, it's like 4k, but you have to keep in mind that it's not only area damage, but it will not pulse, it will activate whenever you hit them. And we're going to be hitting them a lot, because we're going to be attacking really fast, so this 4k can actually turn into a lot of thousands of damage, you know, over a course of those 3 seconds. So that's why I have it here. But you could also most likely swap it for something different, you know. I wouldn't say that's mandatory here to have. But I like lightnings, I like proccing stuff, so that's why I have it here. And it synergizes as well with fast attacking builds, and I love fast attacking builds. Now, as for the last part of the equipment, my other ring, again, as you can see, I have crit chance, crit damage, lucky hit chance, and maximum life. So very nice pair of rings. This is quite low level, but you know, I still like it. And very important aspect for us, the Edge Masters aspect, which will give us a very big damage multiplier with the more resources we have. And we're going to be at 100% resources all the time, so we'll get this damage multiplier at all times. Now, you may ask yourself, wouldn't it be better to put Edge Masters on your amulet and your rapid aspect on your gloves or on your rings, or maybe put the natural balance aspect on your amulet or whatever? Which one would deal the most amount of damage? And you know what? I have zero clue. I have no idea. I honestly have no idea. It's so hard to test anything on the damage dummy, on the target dummy. I just assumed that the rapid aspect would give us the most damage, so that's why I decided to put it here. But I may be wrong, you know, who knows. It's very difficult to make the math, because when you see how fast this character attacks and how many things it procs, it's extremely too hard how much you're doing, how much to figure out. It's extremely hard to figure out how much damage you're doing and which portion of the damage is coming from which source. I have no idea how to do it, to be honest. But, you know, if you don't mind the testing, if you want to test it for yourself, be my guest, go ahead. Now, last part of the build. Let's go. Now, let us talk about Vampiric Powers. And don't worry about the packs here. I'm moving my gear around, so that is why they are not always working. Starting with the first power, Undying. Extremely important for us. We'll get a lot of self-healing through it. If we're using the Temerity and Barrier, it will allow us to build our barrier. If we're not using that, it will help us stay alive a lot. We're attacking very fast, so this gives us a lot of self-healing. Next, Moonrise. This is the bread and butter of the build. This is what makes this build pop, if I may say so. So after attacking enemy 5 times, we do get a very nice buff. We enter a Vampiric Blood Rage, which gives us huge 160% damage multiplier to our basic attacks. So we're not only getting like 20% of bonus attack speed from here, which will boost our damage, but we're getting 160% damage bonus multiplier to all of our skills here, which is just like such a wonderful feeling. It's like pouring honey on your heart. It's just, oh, it's so good. It's so good. You're gonna feel awesome every time it activates, and it's active basically all the time. So Moonrise, mandatory. Next aspect is Ravenous. We do have a quite large chance to increase our attack speed even further when we attack, and it's based entirely on our movement speed. So that's why I said in the video that movement speed indirectly boosts our damage. So we'll get, thanks for this vampiric power, we'll get additional attack speed from our chest, from our boots, and from our, what's it called, this aspect. At the moment, as you can see, it's giving me 52%, which is bonkers, absolutely bonkers. Yeah, just use those two together, they're great. The next vampiric power is Prey on the Weak. We'll get a very nice damage multiplier against vulnerable enemies, and they will be vulnerable all the time. Yeah, so very nice to have. And the last power is really up to you. You can switch it up depending on what kind of content you're using. I was fighting Uber Lilith, and I believe in phase 2 you really do need some sort of source of unstoppable. In the moment when she sucks you in, when she pulls you in, and she spawns the additional monsters around you, that's the moment you really want to have unstoppable active, so you can just use one dodge and you will get the bonus from unstoppable, and this way she will not be able to pull you in, because it's possible to just dodge out of it once she pulls you in, but you know, sometimes you get stuck, sometimes your character blocks and is unable to move, and it's extremely annoying when it happens. And besides, you're unable to crowd control her as much, and there will be only like a couple of occasions in the fight, during the fight when you can crowd control her. So we don't really need that other glyph, that other vampiric power, which I'll show you in a second. So overall, if you're using the Thibault's Will, Rapid Aspect, and when you're fighting Uber Lilith, Uber Duriel, go for Metamorphosis. You'll be able to basically don't have to worry about Uber Duriel's crowd control, and he also does have quite few attacks where he can crowd control you, so this will be useful. But if you're just using, if you're doing other forms of content, or if for some reason you don't want to have a form of unstoppable, which is completely fine, you can play in the game without it. You know, I know people are shocked whenever I say that, but you know, I've done all forms of content with my Frenzy Barbarian in Season 1 without form of unstoppable, and you know, you can kill Uber Lilith, you can kill Tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons without it, so it is possible. It's not as comfortable, of course, and it is much more dangerous, but it is possible. So if you're that kind of person who doesn't need or doesn't want to use Unstoppable, I would suggest you take that out and you put the Domination here. And the Domination pairs so well with the build, because we have extremely easy way of applying Immobilize to our enemies. And this will give us very high damage multiplier against immobilized enemies. And if they're also injured, they'll just die. So I would say this is a very nice combination, and I would say, depending on the type of content you're doing, you can switch it up. We have to be honest here, the thing which makes this build work in Season 2 so well, those are the Vampiric Powers, because without the Moonrise and without the Undying and Ravenous, it would be, I don't know, I don't think I would be able to do all of those things, but I'm really glad they added Moonrise. I'm a huge fan of basic attacks in action RPGs, and I was really missing a way to amplify the damage of basic attacks. I'm kind of worried what's going to happen in the future, because I love Moonrise so much. I think they should, you know, implement it in some way in the future in the game, maybe in form of a legendary ring like they did with the powers from Season 1 or not, but Overall, I really love the packs. I really like the Vampiric Powers. I think they're well thought. I think they're interesting, and to be honest, I would love for them to stay, but I don't think, unfortunately, that's going to happen. But yeah, I rumbled again. Let's move on to the next part of the build. Although I think that was the end. I don't know. So let's go to the epilogue.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is the end. That is everything. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. I hope I did not make any mistake here. And if I did, please let me know in the comment section. I hope you will keep in mind that this is by no means a display of skill. This video is purely for entertainment purposes only. I just wanted to do something dumb, and when it worked, I wanted to share it with you. I'm not saying this is the optimal build. I'm not saying this is the best build. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying I had fun doing it. And yeah, you can do some weird stuff in the game, and when you actually dig a little deeper, you will see that there are a lot of interesting things which you can do with the game. So that's it for now. That's all from me. Thank you for watching the video. Have fun in Diablo 4, and good luck with all of your adventures. Bye bye.
Oak be with you.